Yo, 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 it's Marlo. Welcome to Buttered Popcorn, and this is my review for Alien Romulus. So, Alien Romulus is a new Alien film, and it takes place between Alien and Aliens. So, right in between there. It is directed by Fede Alverez, who you may know from the, I think, 2013 Evil Dead remake and Don't Breathe. So it's starring Kaylee Spaney, who plays Rain, and you may know her from Priscilla, and she's done a couple other things, and David Johnson, who plays Andy. So Fede Alvarez, I thought, had a lot of potential with his first two films. I was really looking forward to watching Alien Romulus because from everything I've heard, it seems like he wanted to take it back to the first movie, like to make it a horror film. Whereas, the second James Cameron one was more of an action film, although it had some horror. He wanted to kind of go straight horror. And when I found that out, being a huge horror fan, I was stoked. I was excited. I couldn't wait to watch it. Fede Alvarez is kind of an acclaimed up-and-comer for horror. Don't Breathe and Evil Dead, which I thought were pretty good. Evil Dead scared the shit out of me and freaked me out, and Don't Breathe was, I thought, a good story. Although I wouldn't say that it was that scary. There was a lot of good tension, a lot of good suspense in it, which is optimal, which is needed in a good horror movie. This film sadly did not have that for me. I don't know what it, well, I know what it was, in my opinion. The film is always at a 10, it feels like. There are a few moments where it's not at a 10. And when you want to create scares, when you want to create tension, when you want to create suspense, you have to slow it down. You give that suspense, you give the audience a breather, and you slow it down so it's not all just like go, 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 right? This film felt like it was all go, go, go. And it's funny because Don't Breathe was such a suspenseful film. I thought that would directly carry over to Alien Romulus, but I just didn't feel it did. It's, to me, it's mostly about horror. If this film, if Fede Alvarez says, I'm going to bring it back to Alien, I'm going to make it a horror movie, you better scare me. You better scare the theater. You better have everybody in their seats, cringing or freaking out or screaming. And when I was in the theater, there wasn't much, if any, of that. I was with someone who gets scared very easily, and they didn't jump. They didn't scream. And I know I've seen so many horror movies that it's harder for me to get scared. But if I take it back to Oddity, the film, 2024 film that I reviewed, check that review out. But I freaked out in that film. I jumped. I freaked. I got scared. The theater was jumping. And it's not all about jump scares. It's about how to create suspense. It's about, not just going 100 miles per hour the whole film. And that's kind of what that film did. And I think it just took away from a lot of the tension, a lot of the scares, a lot of what should be in an Alien film. I will say that Fede got great performances out of his actors. I definitely will say that. I think the quality of the actors is great, and the performances were there, and it really kept the movie going along. So directors obviously work very closely with actors, so I think that that's a positive in directing. In terms of shots, I think it was really good. It kind of reminded me of Blade Runner, especially in the early going of the film, and it made me, it was, Blade Runner was obviously directed by Ridley Scott, so I'm sure he took a lot of inspiration from Ridley Scott. But a lot of the cinematography, especially in the early goings, reminded me of Alien. It reminded me of that old school, what was that movie, like 79 or something, like that old school filmmaking, which is really cool. So I think that's definitely a plus. The scares and the tension, which I feel like we needed from this film, especially if it's going to be heralded as this, we're going back to its horror roots film. It just wasn't there for me. It just wasn't good enough. It wasn't scary enough. And I wanted more from this film, from this franchise, and from this director. Kaylee Spaney is a star. Maybe, I don't know if she is right now, but she will be. She's the type of actor that you're always drawn to her on screen. There are actors that they just do that with their presence, and it's not this overbearing presence, it's not this like I'm cool presence. She's just so there and in the moment and likable without trying to be likable. She just has it, and I haven't seen her other films, honestly, so I want to go back and watch her films because I think that she's going to be the next big thing. On a side note, I was thinking after the film, like, she should have been cast as Ellie in The Last of Us. Because, I mean, they look very similar, and she's just a great actor. So I kind of wish that was the casting, but it is what it is. She was great. I think her and David Johnson basically held this film together. They made me care about the characters, and that's such a huge thing. We wanted them to live. We wanted them to get through this. We were hoping for their survival and that they'll be okay. And when you get that, you got something good. So David Johnson, I'll just speak on him. He brought this like humanity to this world. He brought this innocence to this world, and his depth really shines through in this film. I thought his acting was great, and their relationship together was some of the best parts of this film, so really enjoyed it. I also think the other characters, like the secondary characters, the minor characters, were really great. Everyone was casted well. Cinematography, I thought, was beautiful, especially starting off. We're on a planet. We see the world. We see, how brutal the world is. We see it's dying and it's ugly, but there's beauty in the shots, in the cinematography, and even in the visual effects. And there's a lot of homages to Ridley Scott and James Cameron. Just the filmmaking and the visual effects style and the set decoration. It made me feel like we were in the world of Alien. And that's what you want from a sequel. I love that they use practical effects, but there was a couple times where I saw face huggers and it looked like they were practical and they were just like spinning on something. Like there was wheels underneath the face huggers and it looked like they were just like spinning around like a Roomba or something. So a little kind of took me out of it. The special effects for the aliens and the face huggers were hit or miss, I would say. Sometimes I thought that they were really good, but there were other times where there was a lot of face huggers on screen and it just looked fake, and I kind of wish they just didn't have any of that, but that's kind of besides the point. And unfortunately for me, I felt like this story just wasn't good enough. I really enjoyed the opening. The first act of the film, to me, was the best part of the film because there was tension there, because there was world building, because it wasn't... None of the alien stuff was happening yet. And that's just sad to say, because when you watch Alien and Aliens... when the aliens come in and when you start seeing the face huggers and everything and the xenomorphs, you're like, let's go. But here, I was almost wishing it would go back to the earlier style of the film. So, like, where they took us in this film, it started off for me great. And once we got in the ship, once we got up in space, it was still good. But then it just got too much, and they almost were like, let's watch the other films. Let's watch Alien and Aliens, and then let's just double it and let's just triple it. And that should give them the scares, give them the tension, give them the story they need. But that's not it. It wasn't working. So I think that one of the things that kind of disappointed me was that it started to feel like a video game at a certain point. It was like, go to this level, get this object, do this thing, fight these aliens, get this weapon. It didn't feel like a fluid type set piece storyline. It felt like levels in a video game. It's hard to explain, but when you watch it, you'll kind of see that, or maybe you won't, maybe you will, but that's how I felt. There's kind of a cameo that I thought was just not good, but in terms of the execution, I think the idea of it was good, but you guys will see the execution was horrific. And the ending, to me, I just thought was kind of anticlimactic, and I knew at a certain point that this was going to happen, and the execution and the way they did it, it just didn't work for me, to be 100% honest. I thought it was interesting, but it just didn't end on a note like a bang that I would want from this franchise. All right, that's my review. All in all, I expected a lot more from this. I think the characters and the acting really saved it, the relationships. But that's not what we need from this film, especially as a horror film. I was not scared. People who get scared easily that were with me did not get scared. You could just feel it in the audience. People weren't jumping, people weren't yelling, people weren't screaming, people weren't frightened. And it was a packed house. So yeah, it was disappointing to me. I really wanted to like it. I wanted it to be a lot better than I thought it was, but it is what it is. Go watch Oddity. That's the #1 horror movie of the year for me. Anyways, that's my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments what you thought of it. What did you give it out of 5? All right, peace.